We're talking to David Gitlin, Chairman and CEO of Carrier Global Corporation, a leader in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning space globally. He's been kind enough to give us an interview here while he's in India on this visit. David, thanks so much, for talking to the Economic Times. I think first up, just want to know what are some of your first thoughts as you come to this country. What do you feel about the general business environment?
We've been very positive about the business environment for decades. We established a presence here back in 1987. But I will tell you, I feel like we are at an inflection point in India. We've been very bullish on India for many, many years. We've established a very strong presence, especially on the commercial HVAC side. But we feel that India is going to go through a phase of exponential growth, and we're determined to be right in the middle of that. So we have a strong manufacturing presence here. We're going to significantly increase it. We have a strong supply chain. We're going to increase that 4x over the next 5 years. We have strong engineering, digital presence. We're going to significantly expand that. So when we look globally, we're probably as, if not more bullish on India than any country in the world right now in terms of where to invest.
Sure. So, just take me through your footprint of operations here right now. What's the span?
Well, we have, including our joint venture partners, about 4,500 employees. We have a manufacturing here outside of Delhi and Gurgaon. We have, with our partners, a facility in Pune, and then we have a very significant presence in Hyderabad, where it's our engineering center of excellence, our digital center of excellence, and we also have a business services center of excellence. And then we have a strong presence in Bangalore, where we have a company that we've come together with called Eco-Energy. And they do building monitor and optimization using AI tools that can significantly improve a customer's energy efficiency usage for their buildings. And that's a phenomenal group of team members and operation that we have in Bangalore. And then throughout the country, we'll have technicians and salespeople and service people as well.
Sure. You talked about some of the plans in terms of how you want to expand exponentially on the supply chain side and some of the other areas. What are you doing to sort of facilitate that? What's the kind of investment that's going in? What kind of infrastructure are you looking at creating? How are you looking to expand?
Well, we've invested over $1 billion in India over the last decade, and we're going to increase that by about $800 million over the next 5 years. So we are going to invest significantly in the country, and a lot of it's going to start with manufacturing. So in our Gurgaon facility today, we do very high-end commercial air conditioning systems, chillers. We are going to be adding significantly more content at the very high end, centrifugal compressors that can localize our ability to go address some of the bigger establishments in the country. So it starts with significant further localization on the manufacturing side. And what our experience is that once you do that, it just feeds on itself. It starts with manufacturing, then you're going to grow supply chain. I mentioned we're going to grow that 4x over the next 5 years. After you start to do that, you win more content. After you win more content, you have more services agreement, more digital, more service folks, more technicians. So once we start to build more manufacturing in country, not only for India, but for export as well, that's going to feed on itself with significantly more job growth.
You talked about your own plans. What are your customers saying globally? I mean, do you see them also more keen to set up physical infrastructure in India? And is that driving some of your, enthusiasm and exuberance for this market?
Yeah, 100%. You see it with, even the successful hosting of and leading the G20 summit. India has established itself on the world stage in such a profound way that it's in a unique phase where I think a lot of our peers in the United States are trying to get in a very significant way. And one of the really nice things about India, we met with some government officials this morning, is it's very welcoming. So the way that the government not only attracts investment, but then makes outside companies feel like they are an Indian company makes it incredibly attractive. So you can come in and then you can build an ecosystem within the country, because there is so much talent within the country that it's a very attractive place to set up business. It's incredibly business friendly. So we're all in our investments here.
Sure. I'd like to talk about some of the nuances of your business, the solution and products that you have, and how they sort of fit into some of the larger goals here that the government has. So, for example, there's been a big push on the logistics side here, and there's an expectation that a lot of physical infrastructure will get created on the warehousing side. How are you gearing up your solutions and products for that space?
Yeah, what's nice about our offerings is that as countries urbanize more, we are a big part of that solution. So whether it's our chillers and our air conditioning systems for warehouses, but it also goes well beyond that. It gets into data centers, it gets into chip manufacturing, it gets into urbanization. We've obviously India is going to go through massive urbanization over the next decade and beyond. One Chicago being built every year for the next decade. So that is right in our wheelhouse, that we want to not only be a part of that solution, we want to lead in that urbanization development. So one of the interesting and important phenomenons is that as India's GDP per capita almost doubles over the next 7 years or so, 2,500 to 4,000 or so, between now and 2030, the demand for air conditioning for both commercial and residential applications is going to increase exponentially. So today, only 8% of homes have air conditioning. In places like the United States, it's more than 90%. So what's going to happen is you're going to see more and more demand for air conditioning in commercial and residential applications. What happens then is that buildings contribute 40% of carbon emissions, and 40% of that is from HVAC systems. So we have to facilitate that demand for more air conditioning, but we have to do it in a way that's very friendly to the environment. So we have a lot of innovative solutions to help with that transition.
Okay, that sort of triggers two questions that I had in mind. One is, of course,
Yeah.
on the in terms of how open are customers, Indian customers, to adopting like climate-friendly solutions on the HVAC side? Like, do you see that adoption happening, and is it in line with your expectations?
It is, and it's a win-win. It's a win-win for us and our customers and the environment. So it's a win-win-win because as we adopt more energy efficient solutions for the customers, reduces their energy bill significantly. So they benefit, we benefit as we go to more higher end solutions, but also perhaps most importantly is the planet benefits for generations to come. So we see customers globally, certainly in India, embracing some of the higher end, more energy efficient solutions. And the other thing that's happening globally is a massive shift to electrification. So if you look at the demands that are going to be put on the grid with an increased number of electric vehicles, air conditioning systems pull on the grid in countries, maybe not as much in India, but globally, a lot of the heating systems are going to go from fossil fuel to heat pumps, which are electric. So the demands on the grid are going to be way beyond what the grid can keep up with. So what's going to happen globally is you're going to the need is going to be on effective load management, where you can manage a lot of the electrical needs in off-peak hours. And you're also going to see a lot of a shift to renewables, which is of course what we're going to see in India. And one of the acquisitions that we recently announced that we will finalize here in the next few months is with a German company called Viessmann. And they're really the only company in the world for residential applications that do solar PV, battery, electric heat pumps with a digital overlay that can manage the loads in the home and interface with the grid. So we think that is a significant opportunity for India as well.
So you touched upon data centers, warehousing, where your products are going to be used, also on green energy. So are there storage solutions as well that you're working on that could sort of plug into the green energy generation requirements of
We are.
companies? Okay.
Yeah, we are. We're looking at storage. The company that will be coming together with Viessmann, they actually manufacture batteries, and that is something they provide in the European market. And we are looking at how to scale that in a more global way.
I also want to talk about some of the opportunities here from both a talent perspective that you see and also from an infrastructure perspective. Like if you were to look at India today, vis-a-vis say a market like China, from for global manufacturers, how would you view the opportunity here? Would you choose India? Or would our global manufacturers, do you think, would choose India over say China today or some of the other countries?
Well, what I'd say is that we are incredibly positive and bullish on manufacturing in India. And we've seen it in the performance of our own operations here. This morning I was in our Gurgaon facility, and I would say of all of our facilities globally, it does the single best job of engaging with the workforce to get ideas brought forward by the people closest to the operation. They've created a kiosk system where anyone on the shop floor can propose ideas how to make us more efficient, more productive. And then they have a process to act on those ideas, follow up, and then reward employees that are proactive in making us a better company. So we've been incredibly pleased with our operations in India and the productivity and the quality and the on-time delivery and the support that we've given to our customers. So we want to scale that. We want to scale it because the operations themselves are good, because India is an incredibly attractive market, and because it will become an increasingly important market for us for export as well. So we will be 100% investing in manufacturing. And you look at the evolution of India from agriculture to services to manufacturing to, like some of the most premier high tech clearly in the world. We want to stay on that journey as the country goes through this hyper growth.
Do you think, obviously Carrier has been, and many people in the industry, watchers would vouch for it, has been a pioneer in terms of, technology development in this industry. Do you see more of India providing more of that talent that could, help in your R&D and technology development? Do you see more of that
yeah,
in-house?
100%. I mean, Hyderabad today is one of the most important engineering centers of excellence that we have globally. It has been for a while. And we're going to expand that as a COE for us. And we have not only digital and software R&D COE, Center of Excellence, but also mechanical design. And we view India as having some of the most attractive talent across the board, but certainly when it gets into engineering and digital capabilities. So that's why it's just so attractive to come in. And for us, our goal is to be the global leader in intelligent climate and energy solutions. We cannot accomplish that goal without having a significant presence in India. So we not only want to have a strong presence here, we want to be number one in the Indian market. So we are up there on the commercial HVAC side. We want to look at expanding our presence on the residential HVAC side, because we have not only the Carrier brand, but we have Toshiba as well. So we want a multi-brand strategy on residential and the commercial side. And we want to make sure that we are viewed within India as the premier HVAC brand and company in the country.
You talked about how not only for the local market and your ambitions here, but also for exports. Which are the countries or regions that you see, Carrier products being manufactured here for and going out of?
Well, today we export, and we're looking at expanding that. There are certain countries in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, Europe as well. So we're looking at what are the products that we're going to produce here? What's the supply chain that feeds into those products? And what are the ideal markets? But we see it as a very attractive country to produce and export.
I'm also, very keen to touch upon AI, because everybody's talking about it. And is it in any way playing a role in your industry?
Oh, significantly. And I think we were in the middle of AI before it became such a household terminology, because, as an example, the business that we're a part of in Bengaluru, Eco Energy, that's effectively what we do. We will install a digital platform for a customer that may have multiple sites. And what we do is use the data that comes out of those buildings to create more energy efficient solutions for our customers. We actually provide guarantees around looking at trends and looking at their controls over their HVAC systems to make sure that we use optimization of when they use the equipment, how hard they run the equipment at different times of the day, to make sure that we can guarantee them energy efficiency savings and sustainability savings.
I'm also going to ask you a question that's on everybody's minds, is that in India, we are expecting to see a big infrastructure creation boom, and that's going to happen on the commercial real estate side, as well as, like you said, in the residential side. How would be the best way to manage the environmental impact of that, given your experience in Western markets over decades?
Narrow side on closer to home for us, almost all of our investments are geared towards coming up with more sustainable solutions for our customers, because as countries go through infrastructure booms, you need to do it in a way that is environmentally friendly. And it's usually in a few categories. Number one is a bigger shift to electrification overall. Number two is all things energy efficient. So every R&D dollar we have, a lot of that goes towards energy efficient solutions. We are investing a lot in refrigerants that are better for the environment, so lower global warming potential refrigerants. And I think at the heart of a lot of our investments are all things digital. You mentioned AI earlier. Anything that connects the equipment and can use intelligence to have the equipment run more optimally is always better for the environment.
Just to talk about Carrier's own plans, you've been looking at sort of a reorganization. You're exiting some businesses. You're also acquiring businesses, like you said. So there's a global divestiture program. Any impact of that on India?
Yes, but relatively minor. I think if you look at our total presence in India, there is some there, but that piece will end up, the businesses that we're exiting will end up in the hands of others, where it will be their core area that they focus on. And my guess is they continue to invest and invest exponentially in India in those businesses that they acquire. I mean, what we decided some months back is that focus matters, and our strategic North Star was to be the global leader in intelligent climate energy solutions. So we wanted to double down on our HVAC business with the acquisition of Viessmann, which I think in our space will go down as one of the most transformational combinations ever, because they have a great footprint, great brand, great channel, and great technology that's very energy friendly and grid friendly, and also climate friendly. And then as part of that, we did decide that we were going to sell and exit one of our divisions that makes fire and security equipment, which are great businesses, good presence in India, but they'll end up in the hands of companies that I know just intuitively will have to be committed to India.
Sure. I'm also going to ask you this question. Obviously, back home in the US, you're seeing an environment where there's high inflation, the impact on interest rates and all. As a CEO, is all of that playing on your mind?
It does, but we've had a focus, especially since we spun and became our own public company back in 2020, is we have to be keenly aware of what's happening in the world and very pragmatic, but control what we control. So yes, in a place like the United States, we've seen rates go up. That can affect some of the banks. We saw some of the impact on some of the regional banks, but it's also affected some of the customers that would be actually in the market, in the real estate market. In our commercial HVAC business in the United States, real estate makes up less than 10% of our overall business. So when things like that happen, we will pivot hard to data centers where we have great market share. There is more manufacturing in places like India and the United States, and we have a great presence when it gets into infrastructure and industry spend. In the United States, for example, the lower education, K through 12, is doing very well, plus the higher education is doing very well, and we have great market share there. So we've been very agile in countries around the world where we look at some of the trends, we have our sales force focus on where most of the spend is going to be, and then we pivot really hard. And that happens both by vertical, say healthcare, data centers, warehouses, but it also happens by country, because different verticals are strong in different countries at the time. So it's one of the reasons that we're not only here right now, but you're going to see a lot more of us in India, because this really is a target market for us.
A general feel on the economic outlook? I mean, are you optimistic, cautious? Where are you really in that?
I think that we try to be pragmatic. And that I think the growth won't be what it was in some of the recent years, where naturally physics say that when you have higher rates, that over time that does have some level of growth impact. So we're very clear-eyed about that, but we also try to be in industries that can grow significantly despite GDPs growing at like low single-digit levels. So, for example, the Viessmann acquisition that we did in Europe is going through a relatively low growth. It's actually been more resilient than we had thought coming into 23, but there's no question that the growth rates in a place like the United States or Europe will be a little bit lower growth, this year, next year, than perhaps in prior years. But what's also happening is a massive transition from fossil fuel to electrification, like the heat pump trend, and that's going to drive significant growth for our industry in Europe, and that's one of the reasons we did the acquisition there. So we're, I think, fairly clear-eyed and pragmatic about growth rates by country globally. We do think there's going to be some pressure in certain countries as we go into 24, but we also think that we can grow significantly. You know, our financial algorithm is to grow around 8% a year, and we feel confident that on a steady state basis, that's the kind of growth rates we'll see as a business.
All right. All the best to you, David. That's
Thank you, Mohit.
great catching up with you, and thanks for spending the time. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Yeah.
you.